So today I'm going to focus on giving a guide on how to give proper feedback in Mario Maker. Whether you're a streamer or you're just giving people feedback on their levels, this guide will help you to try to frame things and how to phrase things so that you can help someone improve their level design. The first thing to focus on is constructive criticism. All right, it's not really very helpful to say something like, "This level looks like shit." Like this just looks so terrible, right? Like you can tell, like right by looking at the level for the first screen, it looks not very good, right? But that doesn't really help the person who made the level, because you should always assume that the person who made the level agrees with what they put down, because obviously they put it down, they uploaded it like that. So you always have to convince them and try to give them something helpful. So rather than saying, "This level looks terrible," it's more helpful to say, you know, aesthetically, this level looks extremely barren because there's an extreme lack of ground, there's a lack of terrain, and it would look a lot better if there were some more terrain, if there's some ceilings, etc., to go along with these dotted line blocks and these on-off switches. That will be a lot more specific and a lot more helpful to the person who's trying to make this level and trying to make it better. Now, additionally, when giving criticism, it's generally helpful to start with something positive in order to first let the player or let the maker understand that you're not being a dick, which is always very important. And second, it also shows that you acknowledge what they're going for, you understand what they're going for, and so you're ready to work with them on this. So on this level, for example, I would say you can see that there is a clear focus on on-off switches, and that is true. That is not bullshit. Then you might want to follow up with the shortcomings, but first make sure to at least have some general idea of, to say something positive about your level or about this level and what its merits might be. Now, the next thing is to gauge the skill of the maker, because you always want to give feedback that's kind of scaled to that person's skill level. So this level, you can very clearly tell it's made by a little Timmy. And so if I were addressing this maker in my chat, in my stream, I would focus on some of the big mistakes, right? I wouldn't focus on things that would be nitpicking or artistic differences. For this sort of level, I would focus on the big mistakes here. The first big mistake being, obviously, the aesthetic of this level being terrible. When the person is higher level, you can focus on higher level concepts. But you can't start talking to little Timmy about, color matching when there's not even some ground to work with here. You can't avoid the elephant in the room, basically. Another important thing is to not bullshit. One of the main reasons that I started streaming is because a lot of streamers would sugarcoat things, and I would make a level, and there's a clear issue with it. They're clearly frustrated and suffering, and I'd ask them, what could I do better? What would you like? And a lot of people would say, "Oh, no, it's fantastic, don't change a thing about it." And it's just, why are you lying to me, right? If viewers can smell bullshit from a mile away, and it's very important, sometimes you want to be more diplomatic so that you might sugarcoat the truth. But it's important to not bullshit. You have to, whenever you get feedback, you have to tell the truth. The truth hurts. You don't want to say it in a nasty way. Okay, don't be a dick about it, but you have to tell them the truth. Additionally, it helps a lot to establish that it's a feedback stream. So some streams, like a Tanuki Dan stream, when you submit a level to Tanuki Dan, you're not expecting him to be giving you feedback. It's more like you're sending him a level to see his response and have him enjoy it or whatever, to chill. And that's okay. And that's very different of an experience if you send a level to a feedback stream where the expectation is that when you send a level, it's going to be analyzed. And that person is going to give you their thoughts on what's going on. And if you do not make that clear, what can happen is that sometimes someone will send you a level and they're just expecting to chill out with you or whatever, just enjoy watching their level played, and they just start having their level graded in front of them, and they're like, "I didn't sign up for this. This isn't what I wanted." Right? You have to be really clear that that is the expectation of what is going down, so that there's no surprises. And lastly, whenever you're giving feedback, it's very helpful to leverage your own specialty and your own knowledge. So I personally can do a wide variety of levels except for troll levels, because I don't do troll levels. I'm not good at working with troll levels. So if someone sends me a troll level, I need to be straight with them and just say, you know, this isn't my area of expertise. I'm not going to be able to give you the best feedback on this because it's not something that I really do. All right, and that's fine. And sometimes you can leverage your knowledge. Like if you are, let's say, Grakowski, who is a well-known puzzle maker, and he plays almost exclusively puzzle levels on his stream, then he can give very detailed feedback on puzzle levels. And you can leverage the knowledge that you have from all the let's say, the puzzle levels you've made and played in the past, and what you look for and what you like in those sorts of levels, and use that knowledge to inform how you give feedback. So the first part of the video was mostly talking about how to phrase things and how to like approach feedback in general, and now I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty of how you analyze a level. So first, I always look at the pixel art. You can tell a lot about the level and the maker by looking at the pixel art / thumbnail, and you can see here that the thumbnail is terrible. Without even going to level, I immediately know this is a very low-level maker. Probably little Timmy doesn't really know what he's doing. You see in the lack of capitalization in the title and the garbage description, this is not someone who's really put a lot of time into their level. While a lot of times this first glance at a level might not be right, more often than not, it will be accurate, and that will start giving you an idea of how you might want to approach this. So here I would know that I'm talking to a lower level maker. We're going to be looking mostly for soft locks, for cheese, for big mistakes. In this case, mostly aesthetics and like the flow and etc. Here, for this level, you can see that there's a bit more effort being put here. You can see that in the title we have proper capitalization. The thumbnail, while not pixel art, it's decent. It's like a decent snapshot of the level, and the description has some effort in it. So you can see here that we're dealing with probably at least a mid-level maker. So we're going to be looking for maybe higher level concepts. And this all kind of helps when going into a level, so you have the right frame of reference, so you have the right frame of mind, so that you can address the person in the way that's most helpful to them. While sometimes pixel art and description can be a little bit misleading, the first screen of the level is normally way more descriptive. Usually you don't need to see any more than the first screen of the level to kind of like figure out what is going on. And so I put a very, very heavy emphasis on the first screen of the level being good. Like here I can tell from the level that there's a substantial emphasis on aesthetics. Whether we agree on there being too many semi-solids or not, that's up to taste. But I can tell just by looking at this first screen that the maker is putting effort into making the level look good. It looks like a traditional style level centered around Goombuds and Pokies. We see that question mark block, etc., and we have a neutral start. All these things matter a whole lot. So whenever you enter a level, the very first thing you need to look at is the first screen. First thing you need to look for is, what is this level about? What is the idea? What is the point of the level? What are we going to be doing? And what is the general theme, both gameplay-wise and aesthetically, for a level? One more thing that I check at the very beginning of a level is having a neutral start, which is that Mario can stand here for some amount of time without immediately needing to know that he has to do something in order to not die. You'll see this a lot in speedruns and a lot of levels where people will tell you, oh yeah, well, I had to put a fire bar behind Mario at the spawn because if you wait a little bit, then the whole level breaks. That's still, like, I would still say that's not cool. Usually you want to make sure that you can have some amount of time being able to respond to what you see in the level before you get going. And here, for example, Mario can stand here and just kind of go whenever he feels like it. So this level does have a neutral start. Now, whenever going through and giving feedback, first, you always have to keep an eye for obvious fuck-ups, like soft locks, cheese, blind jumps, etc. These are all things that everyone can kind of like agree on are absolutely terrible, and no matter what stage you are in of getting feedback, you need to normally like say that immediately. So another thing to look out for in levels are higher level fuck-ups, like SD locks. For example, here we have a Yoshi clear condition, and if I were to ride this Yoshi, and now he runs off. He's gone. Mario can no longer beat this level. I am not soft locked because I can kill myself on these Pokies, but the level's kind of over. This would be something that you would want to bring up. And just to be clear, an SD lock stands for a self-destruct lock. It's a situation when the level is no longer beatable, but you can kill yourself. It's basically a soft lock that you can kill yourself, and it's still considered extremely poor form that you do want to avoid. When going through a level, a lot of times you're going to die, and that's just Mario Maker. And one thing you have to be cognizant of is how much of this is your fault versus the maker's fault. Sometimes it's totally the maker's fault for making something that's like totally blind or janky or whatever. And sometimes it's completely your fault because they were clear about it, like the level does it right, and then you just screw it up. So when I get hit here, it's mostly my fault, but usually it's going to be somewhat of a mixture. Because here, for example, some of the awkwardness of getting back on the Yoshi can be kind of mitigated by having a little bit more space here in order to maneuver around. Another thing to keep in mind is your own personal skill level. So if, for example, someone were to send me a shell level, and I don't do shell levels, I don't do shell tricks, and then I keep dying, it's not the maker's fault that I'm dying necessarily, because it's to be expected that I would be dying if there's a trick that I just don't know how to do and can't do reliably in this level. Now, there's a few categories of concepts that you might want to focus on when giving feedback. So the first is the overall idea of the level. What is the main idea of the level? How is it introduced? And then how is it developed? So for example, here we have Yoshi and Poki, and overall it's introduced decently well. And then here we are expanding on that idea. And so one thing you might want to comment on is that, okay, it makes sense that before we were fighting Pokies and they were very low to the ground, very easy to dodge, and now that they are in a more neutral position, they are a little bit harder to deal with, and so the difficulty is ramping up, and that makes sense. The second major category of types of feedback that you want to focus on is the intuitiveness of a level. Is the indication good? Does it make sense? Intuitiveness also goes into indication and whether or not it feels like what the level wants you to do is actually what feels natural to do in this situation. So here, in this level, you want to do a whole lot of tonguing. And that makes sense. That is intuitive. The next major category of feedback to look for is on the flow of a level. So does it make sense that one obstacle chain into the next? And that matters a lot for Kaizo levels. So for example, this level has absolutely no flow to speak of whatsoever. Things happen, like you have one setup and then you have another setup, but there's not really a relationship between one setup and the next. And so that's something that you might want to talk about. So next, you also want to look at the aesthetic of a level. First, can you see what you need to do? Does the level look good? Is there color contrast? Is the maker building an environment? Are there clear mistakes like naked pipes, etc., etc.? Like, aesthetics are something that are clear or that you might want to always think about. So for this level, for example, I would say, you did a good job of putting some terrain around so that, you have the ground, you have an area to work with. However, it also suffers from being very flat. And so a flat terrain isn't the most interesting to play on and also isn't the most visually interesting. Additionally, the background is extremely plain, and so it feels overall like a very plain level. I feel like aesthetically, a lot more could be done here. And this is a lot more constructive and helpful than saying, this level looks bad. Next, something that's very important is to look at the checkpointing and the overall length of a level. Overall, does it seem too long? And the general rule of thumb is that for high difficulty gameplay, you're going to want a checkpoint every 15 to 30 seconds of gameplay. You'll want, for a medium difficulty level, a checkpoint every 40 to 60 seconds of gameplay. And for something that's easy / non-lethal, you might want a checkpoint every 2 minutes. And this all helps keep a level from dragging on and becoming very tedious. Another major facet to focus on is how fun a level is. Like specifically, why would you want to play a level? What is the source of enjoyment for playing that level? So, for example, in this level, the enjoyment comes from the thrill of Mario moving around quickly and just kind of like doing these tricks. that aren't necessarily tight, but they just chain one into the next. And so for this level, you might want to, or for levels in general, you might want to focus on what is supposed to be fun about it, and does it succeed in doing that. So I'm going to try to put all this together in getting feedback on this viewer level on stream. So here, just by opening level, what do I see? Well, there's clearly some effort going into the title and thumbnail and description. So the maker is aware, so they're at least not a low tier maker. And that's going to color my opinion going in. Again, first screen, most important screen. What do we see? Do we have a neutral start? Yes, I can stand here however long I want and it's going to work. Aesthetics. Are the aesthetics good? It's alright. Is it clear to me what the level is about? Well, it looks to me like a bounce level that is a light Kaizo. And overall, that is what I see in the level. I don't see the core idea outside of moles and buzzy beetles, so it's probably like a shell level. And overall, that is what I think the level is going to be, and that sets my expectations for the rest of the level. Now, in terms of the positive, for this level, I would say that the flow is very good. Generally speaking, for constructive criticism, it's going to be a lot more helpful to also recommend, here's something that you could do, here's a change that I would recommend that would be a good change, instead of just saying, yeah, no, I'm having problems with this. Because when you tell someone, oh, I'm having problems with this, you're not really telling them how to fix it. So now that I've hit the checkpoint, now is a good time to start talking about how the ideas in the level are developing. Because this is, like, at this point we've seen enough of the level that there are several ideas that have been shown off, and we can see how the pattern is going for the level. So you'll notice that the beginning of this level was a bounce level centered around moles and shells. And now we've completely changed. So we've introduced a completely different idea, focusing on cannons and flimsy lifts. While some course parts are repeating, we are also not really developing the same core ideas that we were talking about in the first section of the level. And so that is going to be something that you really do want to bring up. Now's a good time to say, you know, you had some ideas before and now you've kind of abandoned them. So when you notice that you keep dying on the same exact setup, like I noticed that I keep dying by that red cannonball, now's a good time to kind of reevaluate and say, okay, how much of that is my fault versus the maker's fault? And so one thing that could generally help here, I would say, is not just to say, okay, that cannonball seems unfair, I keep dying on it, whatever, because that's not, again, that's not very helpful to the person who made the level. I would say, you know, I noticed that I keep dying on that red cannonball because it's not in the right spot at the right time. You might want to increase the tolerance on that jump, potentially by making that red cannon a black cannon, and potentially by changing these cannons that shoot horizontally to have them shoot vertically, so that then everything is aligned. And that in general will be a lot more helpful than just raging at an obstacle that continues to lead to your death. Now, eventually there will come a point where there's a level you won't be able to beat, and that's okay. You want to get as far as you can to give feedback, and normally you can give a pretty hefty amount of feedback just based on the first few screens of the level, and you can get a pretty good gauge of what's going on stylistically. Whenever you do give up, though, it's important to kind of explain a little bit, okay, what are the factors that led to you not being able to beat the level, which is going to be a mixture of probably your playing ability as well as some of the obstacles that are placed in level. So, for example, while some of this is indeed my fault, some of these jumps require speed control that is somewhat unintuitive in the jumps leading up to them. And so I would say, sorry, but as a result of that, that led to me spending a lot of time, which then led me to, on whatever time limit, not be able to beat the level in whatever time. Now, when you finish a level, now is a good time for post-game analysis. So, in general, you want to hold some of the more general comments on a level for last. So, for example, did it flow well? Aesthetically, does it look good? Like, just overall, without specifics, what are your overall thoughts on the level? Now is the time, when you're done with the level, when you're getting ready to either quit or you beat it, now is the time to bring up those general comments. So yeah, that's most of what I have for you. I hope you found this guide helpful, and I hope it helps shape the feedback that you give to other people. Because overall, Mario Maker is a very social game, and the point is to help each other out and not to bring each other down. I'll see you around. If you like more content like this, feel free to subscribe, and, well, that's all I have for you today. See ya!